The NFL Draft, where teams come to fix their problems and draft the players of their future. Some fans will see their favorite team draft the player that will become the face of their franchise, and others will watch their team draft players that are just the wrong guy every year. Hey guys, how's it going? How's your beautiful day going on this beautiful day? Today, I will be ranking each team's ability to draft in the first round since 2020. If you want to get to the list, just skip to this point. I'm going to explain kind of how I put this list together real quick. So what I basically did is go through every single first round pick by every single team and grade them. How good they are now, if they're still on the team that kind of went by what their grade is, like how they performed while they were on that team. If they were to have left that team and started playing way better with a different team, the grade only consists of how good they were with the team that drafted them. And then I put all those grades together and made an average for each team. But it didn't all have to do with averages. It also had to do with how good you have been recently. So let's say if a team had some huge boom picks at the beginning of the 2020s and have been terribly recently, a team that would have been terrible at the beginning of the 2020s and really good since then, that really good since then team is going to be better. Most of the overall team grade had to do with whatever average came out, but at the end of the day, I moved them up and down depending on the pool of players that were given to me. Some teams had like 9 draft picks in the last 6 years, and then there is one team on this list who only had 3 draft picks in the last 6 years, and there's actually one team that only had 1 draft pick, which is the Los Angeles Rams, and that was Jared Verse. They are unfortunately not going to be on this list. They're the only team with 1 player, and I just don't think I can properly rank them. Jared Verse would be like an A grade, which would put them at like close to the top. I'm not just going to grade the Rams off of the 1 first round pick they've had in the last 6 years. I'm going to just leave them off this list. So it is only going to be a 31 team ranking today. Another thing that really plays a part in these grades is going to be positional value. So if you take a swing on a quarterback and completely miss, your grade is going to be pretty low. If you take a swing on a quarterback and get a hit off of it, you're probably going to launch yourself really high up this list. Positional value does mean something. Coming in at number 31 is the Tennessee Titans with an overall D grade. The Titans have just been unbelievably putrid when it comes to drafting. The only time that I think they've drafted a super good player that is going to help this team is Cam Ward, and he can't even be that great of a grade because although I believe he is a franchise quarterback and he has all the makings and the talent of a franchise quarterback, we still don't know yet, and his rookie year wasn't very productive and he did have things to work on. So his grade isn't even that high, but you have 3 pretty much horrible busts. Almost 4. Isaiah Wilson, not in the league anymore. Caleb Farley, not in the league anymore. Treylon Burks is in the league, but we know how terrible he was when he was with the Titans. He's not even on their team anymore, and that was only a draft pick from a few years ago. Peter Skoronski was a solid one. JC Latham is severely underwhelming, and he's just not that good of a tackle at the end of the day. And then obviously Cam Ward, who was solid last year, and in my opinion, he's a franchise quarterback, but technically we just don't know. You really hope that the Titans, when it comes to drafting, just does this, because it's been really bad so far of the 2020s. At number 30, we have the Cardinals with a D+. The Cardinals don't have a single boom pick. Most of these are it's pretty much all busts, but they've gotten some production out of the players, and at least all of these guys are still in the league. Like the Titans drafted people who just don't even play football anymore. They started off with Isaiah Simmons, who just never panned out to be the guy that he was going to be. That one is not 100% on them, but Isaiah Simmons was a guy coming out of college that looked like he was one of the best linebacking prospects ever, and he just didn't pan out whatsoever, which sucked for them. Then Zaven Collins has just given them nothing for the past few years. He's had some injury problems. He's just not that good of a player. Paris Johnson is okay. that's kind of it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is someone that this team drafted with the 4th overall pick, and his production in his rookie year was all right. Like, he probably would have been a C grade over his rookie year, but his sophomore year, his production relatively stayed the same. In fact, it kind of dipped a little bit, and he also had some injury problems. Marvin Harrison Jr. had to get a pretty bad grade. I gave him a D. Darius Robertson is all right, and Walter Nolan, when he played last year, was pretty solid, but he pretty much didn't play at all. I mean, I think he played only like 9 games or something like that. Like, Walter Nolan did not play enough games last year to really give us a good grade. I gave him a C+. At number 29, at a D+, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, what takes them so far down this list is the drafting of Kenny Pickett. He was a complete F, which is 0 points. He was just terrible. Never once was he really a prospect or a quarterback who had a lot of upside. I mean, he just wasn't a good one. They had to swing on somebody, I understand, but at the end of the day, Kenny Pickett was a complete bust. And then besides them, they've just been really mid at drafting. It's just been a lot of okay picks, nothing out of this world. They got Broderick Jones, which is not good. He's one of the worst tackles in the league, and he can't stop having holding penalties. And now he had some injury problems last year. Derek Harmon had injury problems, and when he was in the game, he just wasn't that good. Troy Fautanu is all right. That's kind of it. And then you have Najee Harris, who's not even on your team anymore. He had really, really good flashes, and he obviously had the talent and the athleticism to be a really good running back, but he never formulated into one of the best running backs in the league like a lot of people thought he might after his rookie year. At number 28 is the 49ers with also a D+, a huge dud in here with the Trey Lance. It's an F for not only the fact that I think he only played 5 games with the 49ers, but they also traded a lot of draft capital to go get Trey Lance and bring him to the team, and he was just the most flat dud of all time. What helps them is that beyond the first round, they obviously got Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant, but that was just lucky. Trey Lance was an absolute bust. Javon Kinlaw was a bust. He's not even on the team anymore. Brandon Ayuk is probably the best player that they've drafted in the first round of the 2020s, and unfortunately, he's not on the team anymore. He's had injury problems. He's had off the field problems, so I couldn't really give him that high of a grade. What was I going to give him, an A? If we were just basing this off of Brandon Ayuk's best season, then you'd probably give Brandon Ayuk an A, but I had to bring it down to a B, and I was close to bringing it down to like a C+ or a C, but Brandon Ayuk at one point was a very good wide receiver, so I at least gave him a B, but he's probably not even going to be on the team anymore either. And then Michael Williams last year was just not, he just was bad when he played this year. Michael Williams was not a good football player when he played this year. He's still a rookie. He can be better. And then Ricky Pearsall, I gave a C. If he gets more healthy, I think he shoots up that grade way faster, but right now, Ricky Pearsall is a C. At number 27, I have the Browns with the D+. They only had 3 picks in the 2020 so far. One of them was Jedrick Wills, just not that good of a player. Greg Newsome, who did actually have some decent production and was a decent corner in this really good Browns defense. Like, he did get traded after his into his second year, but I don't think he was a horrible player when he did play for the Browns. And then last year they drafted Mason Graham, who was very solid when he was in the game. He wasn't like, I don't think, a top 5 pick the way that he was chosen in the draft, but he was definitely a very solid player in one of the best defensive lines in the league last year. So I gave him a good grade as well. Mason Graham is what carries the Browns over the rest of these people, but I had a hard time. All these D+, I mean, most of these rankings in general were really hard to make because there were so many that were so close, with some with busts and whatever. The Browns are a team that I would understand if you thought they were way farther down the list and didn't give Mason Graham or Greg Newsome that much credit, which I 100% understand. I would take it. I would understand, and I would take it down as well. But I'm just leaving it here because I don't know. I don't know. This is where I placed it. In fact, actually, I'm going to move the Browns 2 spots down. I've made an executive decision. I'm going to move the Browns back down to the 29th spot, so the Steelers and the 49ers are both going to move up 1 spot as well. At number 26 is the Raiders with a D+ as well. They started off with just dud after dud after dud after dud. They had 6 picks in the 6 years, and 4 of them were busts, and that was the first 4 years. They had Damon Arnett, Henry Ruggs, Alex Leatherwood, and Tyree Wilson. all complete busts. All complete busts. But what saves them is they drafted Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty back-to-back years. Both of those guys are about as good as you could possibly do at drafting. They fell into their lap. It was kind of no-brainer picks, but I mean, both of them, Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers, deserve the highest rank you can get, or the highest grade you can get, because of how unbelievably talented they were and how unbelievably good they were in their first years, or in their first couple years, considering the circumstances. Ashton Genty finishing last season with 1,000 yards, I do not think you understand how stupendous that is, because that was possibly the worst offensive line that the NFL has ever seen. I mean, holy crap. That run blocking unit was out of this world terrible. And Brock Bowers being able to be an all-pro in his first year, and he's already the best. Like, everybody knows that Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the league at this point, especially when he's healthy. He had a little bit of health problems last year, but I don't think that matters whatsoever. I still think that he's the best tight end in the world, and that obviously gets the best grade you can get. Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers are saving the Raiders from being the last team on this list. At number 25, I have the Commanders with a D+. The Commanders are going to be very similar to the Raiders, except they drafted Jaden Daniels, which is an obvious A+, the best grade you can get. He had probably the greatest rookie season for a quarterback that we have ever seen, and I mean, I use probably loosely. It definitely is the best rookie season that we've ever seen from a quarterback ever. He led the Commanders all the way to the NFC Championship game, which is just stupendous. Just what an amazing job by Jaden Daniels, and he obviously deserves an A+, and because he is a quarterback and they do have a franchise quarterback now, they get lifted really high on this list. But every other pick in the 2020s has been bust worthy. Josh Connerly is the only one I'm going to give a little bit of, leeway with, because he's a brand new rookie that came in last year, but he was pretty bad when he played. Then before Jaden Daniels, they drafted Emmanuel Forbes, who's not even on the team anymore, and when he was on the Washington Commanders, he was a terrible football player. Then it was Jahan Dotson, who just never really got as much targets as you'd like to see. He was okay, but overall, for the pick that they gave up for him, or the pick that they used on him, he just wasn't very good. Then they had Jamin Davis, who had an okay year, but overall Jamin Davis was also a terrible player. And then Chase Young, who you drafted with the second overall pick, he is already not a Commander anymore, and he's not been a Commander for like 4 years. Chase Young was barely ever a Commander in the first place, just ended up being a complete bust pick as well. But because the Commanders have drafted a franchise quarterback in the last 6 years, they do get hoisted above most of these guys, but they're in really dangerous territory right now. At number 24, we have our first C grade, which is the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins have been pretty mid at drafting. They've drafted some of the right guys that worked for short term but didn't end up working in the long term. Most of the guys that they have drafted are not on their team anymore. Noah Igbenogany was a bust pick in the first round for them. Austin Jackson is still there. He's not amazing, but he's okay. He's a serviceable guy. Then they drafted Tua, which was good for a year or so before he got a bunch of concussions and just didn't know how to read a football field anymore, and he's bad. He got a really, really bad grade because overall they used a good pick on him. I think it was like it was a top 10 pick. I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but they used a pretty high pick on Tua, and he just was never really that good. He just, I hate to break it to you, he had a good season where he had one of the best offensive infrastructures in the league, along with a super mind at coach, and he was a supercomputer there for a second, but yeah, Tua has just been terrible. And once again, he's not even on the team anymore. Then they drafted Jalen Phillips, who was very good as well, but at the same time, he had so many injury problems and he's not on the team anymore. Jalen Waddle, who was really, really good. He was one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the league. Once again, not there anymore though. And a lot of his production was cut short because the Dolphins weren't able to give him a good quarterback to get him the ball consistently. Chop Robinson has been insanely mid his first 2 seasons. In fact, I gave him a generous grade of a C, but he could go farther down than that. He has had some flashes of really good football, but at the end of the day, I don't like a lot of what I see from Chop. And then last year they drafted Kenneth Grant, who is actually very, very, very solid. So I think Kenneth Grant is probably their best draft pick of the 2020s. At number 23, I have the Saints, who I gave a C. They've just been insanely mid. Like, they've been probably the most mid-drafting team in the league. The offensive linemen that they've drafted, Cesar Ruiz, Trevor Penning, Peyton Turner, all those guys, just not very good players. And at the end of the day, Cesar Ruiz is still there, but Trevor Penning and Peyton Turner, just not very good players. Peyton Turner is just horrible. He is a bust. Brian Breesy has been just severely underwhelming. Talise Fuaga has also been just an okay player. The 2 best first-round picks that they've had in the last 6 years have been Chris Olave, who without injury problems has been a very, very solid wide receiver, and then also Kelvin Banks last year. Kelvin Banks was very solid for the Saints in his first season. Next up is the Jets with a C. They had the most draft picks of any other team. They had 9 draft picks in the last 6 seasons, which I think there's one other team that had 9 draft picks, but they were tied for the most in this time period, and they really didn't hit on a lot. And what they did hit on is no longer on their team. Mekhi Becton had injury problems. When he played, he was all right, but at the end of the day, he left that team very quick. Elijah Vera Tucker was good when he played. Tons of injury problems, not on the team anymore. Zach Wilson not only isn't on the team anymore, but he never was anything good at all for the Jets. He was unbelievably horrible. One of the biggest busts in NFL history. Jermaine Johnson not on the team anymore as of recently. He was a solid player when he got to play, but he was injured a lot. Garrett Wilson still on the team. Really solid wide receiver. This was a great pick. Then Sauce Gardner, another great pick, but he's not on the team anymore. He is one of the best corners in the league, so I obviously didn't give him a bad grade. Sauce Gardner is fantastic. Will McDonald is very solid as well. He's still on the team. He's had, I think, close to 10 sacks a couple times. He's a solid guy. Olu Fashanu, mid. Armand Membu, mid. I'm going to give them both a little bit of leeway, more to Membu than Fashanu, but still, both of those guys are still young and have chances to grow. But overall, just a very, very mid-class for the Jets, and most of these guys aren't even on the team anymore. At number 21, I have the Packers with a C. They're getting carried really hard by Jordan Love in 2020, because after that is Eric Stokes, who for the Packers just wasn't a good player, and he also wasn't there for very long. Devontae Wyatt is okay, and I think when he plays, he's a solid player, but he just doesn't play enough. Quay Walker is not on the team anymore, and he was a solid player when he was there, but I don't think he was good enough for the pick that they used on him. Lucas Van Ness also deals with some injuries, and he's just not that good when he's in the game, in my personal opinion. Jordan Morgan is not very good, and Matthew Golden had a lot of injury problems, and when he did play, he didn't get the ball a lot. We didn't see a lot of production from him in his rookie year. I do think that he has a lot of potential and could give this team a real weapon. They just haven't used him like that yet. But overall, Jordan Love is the huge booster for this team because he has an A grade. Everybody else has a C or a D. At number 20 is the Bills with a C. They only have 4 draft picks in the last 6 years. One of them being Gregory Rousseau, another one being Dalton Kincaid. Those are their 2 best draft picks. But they also did bust on a pick with Kaiir Elam. Kaiir Elam was just not a good player ever, and he's not even on the team anymore. He only lasted a couple years. But recently this year, they drafted Maxwell Hairston, who I thought played some very solid football, and he has real promise going into the rest of his career. But right now, he's just okay as a player. Overall, with the lack of draft picks and no real crazy booms, it was just kind of a mid time period of drafting in the first round for the Bills. At number 19 is the Buccaneers with a C. They have Tristan Wirfs, which was a big boom A, one of the best tackles in the league. If it weren't for injury problems, he would be probably the best tackle in the league. He's definitely one of the more athletic ones and one of the more versatile ones. Last year, they also drafted Emeka Egbuka, who was just fantastic. He was was just fantastic for the beginning of the year. After he got some injuries, he had some drop problems, which really did drop his grade. But overall, he had almost 1,000 yards in his rookie year, and he was really solid. But besides those two, they had a bust with Joe Tryon Schroyenka. Hopefully I said that correctly. Kalijah Kancey was also an okay player. I mean, he's nothing special, and he's still on the team right now, but Kalijah Kancey's just another player on a football team. And then Graham Barton, who just has been bad. He's just been a bad player. Objectively, he's been one of the worst centers in football, actually. But he still is young, so I'll give him a little bit more leeway. But he's objectively been horrible. At number 18, we have the Vikings with the C. Their saving grace is their wide receiver draft, because they drafted Justin Jefferson, which is an easy A+, of course. And then they also drafted Jordan Addison, who's going to get a really high grade as well. But they do have some pretty bad busts along with a quarterback bust. JJ McCarthy is just not a real starter, so much so that they already have brought in his replacement in Kyler Murray, and maybe he wins the starting job. I don't know, but I think a lot of people understand that JJ McCarthy is just not an NFL quarterback. They also drafted Lewis Cine, who just didn't pan out whatsoever. Christian Darrisaw, who also didn't pan out whatsoever. I did leave off one of their picks because it was Jeff Gladney, who sadly passed away, and I just obviously I'm not going to put a grade on that one because that's just not fair. But the last draft pick in this era for them was Dallas Turner, or not the last pick, but like the last one that I haven't talked about was Dallas Turner, who's just been a very solid player who has been getting better every year. At number 17, I have the Giants with a C. The Giants had 8 draft picks in the last 6 years. They have had a couple busts with Kadarius Toney and Evan Neal, 2 guys that they thought they were going to bring in and be real difference makers in this offense, and those guys, Kadarius Toney's not even in the league anymore, and Evan Neal is just putrid. They drafted Kayvon Thibodeau at number 5, which is going to give Kayvon a really low grade at this current point because he hasn't played even close to a top 5 pick. I do think he's been getting better every year, and he's a very solid player and a solid piece in this defense. I just don't think he's anything close to a top 5 pick as of now. They drafted Malik Neighbors, who feels like he might have some of the best talent of any wide receiver in the league. He's up there with the best of them. He's an LSU guy. He's been fantastic. Jackson Dart, they traded up back into the first round, and he looks like a possible franchise quarterback. There is some things that he obviously needs to work on, especially with making sure he keeps himself healthy and out of the concussion protocol. But overall, Jackson Dart was fantastic in the games that he played last year. Abdul Carter at the end of the season made a push for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He was absolutely fantastic. He started a little slower, but by the end of the year, he was playing like the guy we thought he was going to be. And Andrew Thomas, who they drafted in 2020, when he plays, he is very, very good. He changes how good this offensive line was, because even in the beginning of the year when they didn't have Andrew Thomas because of injury, this offensive line was by far the worst unit in the league. And then Andrew Thomas gets there, and they're at least a solid unit. So he's a really, really good piece for them. As long as he can stay healthy, he's been a great pick. The last pick that I haven't talked about is Deonte Banks. He's not very good, so who cares? At number 16 is the Bengals with a C+. Their saving grace is the beginning of the 2020s when they went back-to-back drafts where they just had the easiest pick whatsoever. They had the 1 pick, and the 1 pick was going to be Joe Burrow. Whoever got that pick was getting Joe Burrow. And then Jamar Chase was kind of a layup that they got in the second year. After that, it's been pretty mid. Dax Hill, Miles Murphy, Amarius Mims, and then last year, Shamar Stewart. And the Shamar Stewart saga has been the worst of all of it. So hopefully they can fix it this year, or actually, they won't fix it this year. They just traded for Dexter Lawrence. I forgot. So never mind. They won't fix it this year. They've been mid as of recently. So maybe it was a good thing that they traded for Dexter Lawrence. At number 15 is the Chiefs with a C+. Their only really big hit was Trent McDuffie, who is unfortunately not on the team anymore, but he was an All-Pro at one point, and he was fantastic, so that was a good one. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Felix Anudike Uzoma, or however you say that guy's name, he's also just not very good. Clyde gave them like one decent season. Other than that, he's been basically out of the league. George Karlaftis was terrible last season. Xavier Worthy just doesn't seem he seems more like a gadget wide receiver than a real wide receiver in an offense that's trying to compete for one of the best offenses in the league. Like Xavier Worthy is just not that impactful of a wide receiver. Last year, they also did did draft Josh Simmons, who when he played was fantastic. He just had some injury problems. I gave him a B. At number 14, we have the Colts with a C+. They had 4 draft picks in this one, and they did have a quarterback bust, which was Anthony Richardson Sr. They drafted him with the 5th overall pick because of his measurables, but he just wasn't good at all. They also drafted Kwity Paye, who is no longer on the squad, but their last 2 years have been really good. Tyler Warren was arguably an all-pro level tight end last year for half of the season. He was fantastic. Then they got some other quarterback issues and his production kind of slowed down, but Tyler Warren is an awesome football player, and he really, really is one of the better tight ends in the league already. And then Laiatu Latu is one of the most underrated edge players in the league. I think Laiatu Latu is very, very, very good. He started slow in his rookie year, but last year he got better, and I think that Laiatu Latu is just going to keep getting better. Next at 13, I have the Patriots with also a C+. They drafted Drake May and Christian Gonzalez. Drake May was an MVP candidate this year in his second season. Christian Gonzalez is one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Those are two big, big, big booms. Like, that is really, really good for the Patriots. It's part of the reason that they were able to go to the Super Bowl this season in just the second year with this quarterback. But those are just 2 of the 5 draft picks they've had in the last 6 years. The other ones were Cole Strange, who's not on the team and wasn't very good when he was on it, and then Will Campbell, who had a disappointing rookie year. He had some really good highs, but also some really, really big lows, and the biggest of lows in the Super Bowl. I think that Will Campbell can continue to get better. I think he really did show some flashes of good play at some points, but he's getting really close to being moved to guard. And then last but not least, Mac Jones, and I don't have to explain that one. He's not very good. He was definitely a bust quarterback, but at the end of the day, he didn't get the worst grade in the world because they did go to the playoffs with him, and he did make a Pro Bowl technically, so I'll give Mac Jones the benefit of the doubt and not give him a complete F. At number 12 is the Jaguars with also 9 picks and a C+ grade. They started off the 2020s with some pretty terrible picks. K'Lavon Chaisson not on the team anymore, and while he was in the Jaguars uniform, he was just a terrible player that couldn't stay on the field very much. And then they also drafted CJ Henderson, who we all know is just horrible. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even play football anymore. Travis Etienne had an up and down time with the Jaguars. He had a couple great years, a couple underwhelming years. Overall, he was a solid player. No longer on the team though. Trevor Lawrence has also had a really, really up and down time. He's had some really good moments where people think he's top 10, and then he's dipped all the way down to where some people don't think he's a starter, and now he's back here where he's starting to get closer to that top 10 range again. We have to see more from Trevor Lawrence, but he's been looking a lot more consistent as of recently. Then they picked Devin Lloyd, who was really solid. He had some injury problems, obviously tore his Achilles, but he was an all-pro first team last year. Unfortunately, he's not on the team anymore, though. They drafted Trevon Walker with the 1st overall pick, and he's had an up and down time also. He's been better as of recently, but overall, Trevon Walker has not even close to lived up to the 1st overall pick. Then was Anton Harrison, who's been really solid. Next was Brian Thomas Jr., who had an unbelievable rookie year, but his production took a serious hit last year. He didn't even look like the same player. I think by the end of the season, he started to look a little bit better, but overall, Brian Thomas Jr. just didn't look at all like the same player that he did his rookie season. And then they drafted Travis Hunter last year, who had some injury problems, and he couldn't really get going into the game. It's really hard to really grade Travis Hunter right now. Next year, he's going to be playing a lot more defense, so we'll be able to grade him a little bit better, but it was really hard to give him a fair grade with this one. But overall, the Jags have been pretty decent. They've had a lot of picks, and they just need to get everybody to be consistent, and obviously, some of these players aren't even on the team anymore. At number 11 is the Carolina Panthers with a B grade. Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, Teteroa McMillan, all big hits. Obviously, Teteroa McMillan was able to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. J.C. Horn has had some injury problems, but when he plays, he's one of the best ball hawks in the league. And Derek Brown is a beast on the defensive line. Those are 3 really good draft picks. There are other 3 draft picks from this era were Ikem Ekwonu, who is okay, nothing crazy special. Bryce Young, who they drafted with the 1st overall pick, and unfortunately, I think he's already hit his ceiling. He's had some struggles in his career, but he just led them to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I just don't think he's actually a franchise quarterback. He's definitely nowhere near a player that should have gone first overall. At the end of the day, I think we're a couple years into his career and we've already reached the max potential of what Bryce Young can be in his career. And then they drafted Xavier Legette, who is pretty much a bust. He's a very bad wide receiver as of now. But their hits have been really good, and the reason that they're a playoff team and a reason that they're probably going to have a shot at being a playoff team next year is because of the picks that they've also made in the last 6 years. At number 10 is the Broncos. They drafted Pat Surtain, which is an A+ easy. He's the best corner in the league. He won Defensive Player in the Year, which winning Defensive Player in the Year as a corner is one of the hardest things to do. They also drafted a franchise quarterback in Bo Nix, who is one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL, and they no longer have to deal with that, especially after the long quarterback purgatory that they went through. They're finally out of it with Bo Nix. Their other two draft picks right now, we don't really know. Jahdae Barron didn't get a ton of play last year. We'll see. Jahdae Barron seems like a very talented player, and he's going to find himself in this team. But overall, considering the production that was put up last year and the fact that Jahdae just didn't play a lot, I don't really know how to grade him very well. And then their other one was Jerry Jeudy, who was very up and down. He had his highs, he had his lows, but at the end of the day, he was nowhere near the 12th overall pick, and there was people like Justin Jefferson on the board that we could have picked instead. So at the end of the day, the Broncos have made two really good draft picks, along with a franchise cornerstone quarterback that really shoots them far up this list. At number 9, we have the Texans, who also had 4 draft picks in this era. They also got a B. They drafted Derek Stingley, who is one of the 3 best corners in the league. Will Anderson is now the highest paid edge rusher in football, and it is deservingly so. He is unbelievable. He is a beast. He's not as good as maybe Myles Garrett, but he's still ridiculous. Kenyon Green, complete bust. I don't even think he's in the league anymore. And then CJ Stroud is not a bust yet. I think he still has a lot of talent. He just needs to be more comfortable in his game. We forget that CJ Stroud had one of the best rookie seasons that we have ever seen, and maybe he never gets to that point. As of right now, it looks like that's a possibility, but his offensive line keeps getting worse every year, and this year the Texans finally have put a decent offensive line around him, so we'll really see. I'm still giving him the benefit of the doubt. I still think he has franchise quarterback potential. We'll see with CJ Stroud, and they've won 3 playoff games with him, so I guess that means something. At number 8 is the Chargers with a B. They had a bust to begin the 2020s with Kenneth Murray, and then bounced back with Justin Herbert, who is, again, probably the most talented quarterback in the league, or one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. That was a super boom pick. It's just, if he doesn't perform in the playoffs, they're going to really have a problem because of whatever, but at least you know that Justin Herbert is going to be your franchise quarterback. He's been fantastic. They also drafted Rashawn Slater, who has made a couple Pro Bowls, Joe Alt, who is all-pro worthy, Quentin Johnston, who as of last season has been playing some really good football, actually. And if it weren't for injuries, I really think that Quentin Johnston might have had like 1,300 receiving yards last year. He was very solid, and honestly their best receiving target last year. Then they drafted Omarion Hampton, who also had an injury last year, and he started off a little bit slower, but after he started off slower, Omarion Hampton took off and was playing really good football. The Chargers just have a problem with drafting interior offensive linemen. They drafted Zion Johnson, who has just been terrible, and he's not even on the team anymore. At number 7 is the Cowboys with a B+. They started off extremely strong in the 2020s. CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons may not be on the team anymore, but he's still getting an A+ grade. He had 12 point sacks in every season of his first 4 seasons. Ridiculous player. And obviously CeeDee Lamb is one of the better wide receivers in the league. Then they drafted Tyler Smith, who is a dog. He's a really good player. And then last year they drafted Tyler Booker, who also had a pretty solid season. Their 2 rough picks were Mozzie Smith and Tyler Smith, both guys who just haven't been that good. But overall, the Cowboys haven't been that bad at drafting in the first round. At number 6 is the Falcons. They started off with AJ Terrell. Then they got Drake London. Then they got Kyle Pitts. Then they got Bijan Robinson. Then last year they got Jalen Walker and James Pierce. All of these guys are fantastic players. Hello, this is Editing Brody. I completely forgot about the whole James Pierce saga, the stuff that's going on with him off the field. When I made this video, for some reason, I skipped skipped over that entire thing that's happening. I gave him an A grade, which he could fall all the way down to an F, depending on how this stuff goes, and he's obviously a terrible person, and I'm not advocating for anything for him. I just completely forgot about everything that happened with him. So I'm going to leave the Falcons with the grade that they currently have because I still think they've been very, very good at drafting recently. So pretty much I'm just null and voiding the James Pierce draft pick altogether for now. Kyle Pitts obviously had one of the best rookie tight end years. Then he's been more down than up, but as of last year, he's been back. Like last year, Kyle Pitts was a very, very solid tight end again. Drake London is one of probably the best 15 wide receivers in the league. AJ Terrell is probably one of the best 10 corners in the league. Bijan is the best running back in the league. James Pierce and Jalen Walker are going to be one of the best pass rushing duos in the league. They've been fantastic. The only thing that hinders the Falcons a ton about this is Michael Penix being drafted. As we all know, that Michael Penix draft was one of the weirdest times ever for them to take a quarterback at that point. Michael Penix being the oldest quarterback in the draft, and not only was he the oldest quarterback in the draft, but now he's torn his ACL after his second season, and it just looks a little bleak for Michael Penix right now. I'm not going to completely rule him out, but it doesn't look very good for him. At number 5 is the Ravens. They had 8 picks in the last 6 years, and they've done pretty solid. Their worst pick in this era was Rashad Bateman, in my personal opinion, and he hasn't even been that bad. Their second worst was Nate Wiggins, and again, he hasn't even been that bad. A lot of Ravens fans don't like Zay Flowers, but he's made 2 Pro Bowls, and he has 1,000-yard seasons. He's been a solid wide receiver. If they could, I think Zay Flowers is just more of a number 2 wide receiver. They need a real top dog there, but overall, Zay has been pretty solid. Kyle Hamilton is one of the best defenders in the league right now. Malachi Starks is also very solid. Tyler Linderbaum is no longer on the team, but he was the best center in the league before he left. And then Odafe Owe and Patrick Queen, both very solid players, both not on the team anymore, but they were solid with the Ravens before they left. Now at number 4 is the Chicago Bears. Colston Loveland. I talked about Tyler Warren being an all-pro talent. So is Colston Loveland. He was absolutely fantastic. He started a little bit slower, but by the end of the year, he really showed why he was drafted where he was drafted. He was fantastic to end the year. In my opinion, Colston Loveland is a better receiving tight end overall than Tyler Warren. He's just been great. Obviously, they drafted their franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams, who can do things that no other quarterback can do, and that's just perfect for them. Rome Odunze, who has had some injury problems, but when he's played, he looks like he can be a 1 wide receiver. He's looked fantastic. He's the reason that they were able to move on from DJ Moore and be comfortable with putting their faith in Luther Burden as well. Then they picked Darnell Wright, who is an all-pro last season. He had a little bit of a slower start to his career, but as soon as Ben Johnson came here, Darnell Wright has been unbelievable. The first pick of the 2020s for them was Justin Fields, and I mean, I don't really think that pick necessarily matters at all for them, but it technically was a bust pick, so it brings them down a little bit, I guess, but overall, it doesn't really change anything. At number 3 is the Seahawks, also with a B+. This could be higher if they still had Jordan Brooks, but they had to get rid of him. Jordan Brooks was still very, very solid in a Seahawks uniform. Unfortunately, he's not there, and the best years of his career have been with the Dolphins so far. I mean, the best year, but he did have a couple better years with the Seahawks. That's neither here nor there, but he is one of the most underrated players in the league right now. Then obviously hitting home runs with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is now the highest paid wide receiver in the league and widely known as a top 3, maybe even the best wide receiver in the league, depending on how you like to rank your wide receivers. Devon Witherspoon, arguably the best slot corner in the league. He's been fantastic. Byron Murphy is a fantastic defensive lineman. Gray Zabel is okay. The only thing that the Seahawks have had a little bit of trouble with drafting clearly is their offensive linemen. They're not overly perfect. It's a lot of okay players. Gray Zabel and Charles Cross both on the team still, and they're both okay. I just don't think they're anything crazy special. I think that Charles Cross had his best season so far this season, and then obviously Gray Zabel is a rookie, so we'll see. At number 2 is the Lions with also a B+. They would have probably an A as well as the number 1 team if it weren't for Jeff Okudah being a complete bomb of a pick. I mean, that was just horrible. But other than that, Penei Sewell, Jamison Williams, Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, all just fantastic. They just had a really, really good run there. As of recent, the last 2 years, I think they've also been brought down back to earth. Terrion Arnold is just not that great of a guy. Or, no, that's not what I mean. He's just not that great of a corner at the end of the day. I do think he has some upside, and I do think that he can pick it up and still be a very solid player. But as of right now, not only has he had some injury problems, but he has had some major coverage problems that he needs to address at the end of the day. But I'm not going to write off Terrion Arnold altogether yet. And then Tyreek Williams has just been underperforming. He's just not that good yet. I don't know. He's a rookie. It was just his first season. We will see. But Tyreek Williams in his rookie year was not very good. And at the number 1 spot is the Philadelphia Eagles, who gave the one and only A on this list. The only reason that they don't end up being like an A+ is because of Jalen Reagor. And they deserve to pay for Jalen Reagor. But other than that, they've been almost perfect. Devonta Smith, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, and Jihad Campbell. They've been pretty much perfect when it comes to drafting ever since Jalen Reagor. But because of Jalen Reagor, they didn't end up being an A+. But they are a certified A, and they are definitely the best drafting team of the 2020s so far. That'll be it for this ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I will be making plenty more videos about the NFL in my lifetime. So go watch the rest of the videos that I made for this season. I will see you guys in the next video.